Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video session. In this session, Reporting Explored, we're going to go beyond the overview and look in a bit more detail at how the content and the reports are structured, and go and look at actually creating some in the system and talking about how you can personalize them, etc. So quite a bit longer a session. We're just going to kick it off with a few slides to get started. So as we talked about in the overview, the idea is to collect standardized information at the project level and put it out into different output formats for the project. So fundamentally things are held at the project level. The same project can result in reporting which looks like this, our project statement on one page, or this, a 4-page poster report, or lots of other variations, of course. Some of these blocks of content will be the same, some will be different, expanded or contracted, or included or not included. So you can have the report that matches your requirements. Obviously a templated set of those come in the system, but you can personalize those if you want to, and we'll have a look at these couple in a bit more detail further on. The reporting not only happens at the project level, but you can then roll up a collection of projects, which we call a portfolio, and report on those as a combination set. Now that can be all the projects in a program, it can be all the projects in a department, it can be all the projects that are happening next month or completing next month, something like that. So grouping those projects together, the ways in which you need to group them in to make sense in your organization, sometimes by programs, sometimes by departments, sometimes by sponsors, etc. You can then, if you want to, add a third tier to that, which is what we call multi-portfolio reporting, and that takes the outputs of the portfolios and rolls those up again to a further level. So if you had portfolios which are collecting projects by department, so you had 10 projects in Department 1, 10 in Department 2, 10 in Department 3, rather than getting a 30 project report, you can have a multi-portfolio report which gives you 3 lines, which are Departments 1, 2 and 3, totaled up at the bottom, which is then an organisational total, if you like. And of course you can run those multi-portfolio reports against any portfolios. So you can run a departmental multi-portfolio report, but also a program multi-portfolio report, which will roll up your programs across the organisation. So the structures that you apply control how that works. So let's have a look at the tiers of reporting in a little bit more detail. So let's have a think about Project A first of all. Project A has data collected from a number of sources. From its plan, we're going to collect task information, cost information, resource information. That plan is held as a file. It can be a Microsoft project file if you want it to be. It's more likely in practice to be a planner file, but it can be either, and it can vary from project to project. We're also going to collect risk information, can be a planner file, can be a spreadsheet. We can collect issue information, again, can be a planner file, can be spreadsheet. All of those sources are going to bring rich data back to the system at the task or risk or issue level, with lots of information associated with it. We'll also bring images back, so images will be files held in the project, added by the users, flagged as images that you want to include in your reporting. And also we're then going to bring data from spreadsheets for you. Now spreadsheets sometimes have a bit of a poor reputation, but that's because people don't manage them in sufficiently controlled a way. So normally when we're dealing with spreadsheets, they will be templates in your method, and they will then have locked down sections in them that people can edit content, add content, and other sections which will prepare and package data for the main system. And every time this spreadsheet is checked back in, we'll read some data out of it. Often this is used for things which are not quite as mature and consistent across multiple organisations, such as benefits, finances, health and safety data, a wide range of other things that people collect. So you can standardise those so they're the same across all of your projects, and therefore the data that feeds through will be the same. You can of course also add project by project spreadsheets. I was going to say random, but random is not quite the right word. Specific content for each project, and there you can again go in and grab a block of data and have that included in your project report, and that will then of course be just in that particular project. We also then have properties, if you like, metadata for the project. These are single statistical values that encapsulate some element of the project. So they might be things that you set up in your system that you want people to fill in, like who the project manager is, who the sponsor is, which department, things of that type. There may also be things automatically calculated for you, like we calculate the number of overdue tasks, the number of completed tasks, the number of outstanding risks, and things of that type. But then also other properties can be calculated from your spreadsheets. For example, things like the overall benefits value, the turnover figure from finances, those sorts of things. So properties are, often people have 100 or so properties for their projects. Not all projects will feed all properties, but there'll be some different ones coming in from different types of projects sometimes. So all that data is combined with assurance information. We store a detailed audit trail about who's been accessing what, user access type information, and version and approval status of documentation, things of that type. So that's all sat there, and that's able to feed into your reports. So here's our project statement. It contains a picture of the current Gantt chart from the currently checked in task information. We've got a list of overdue tasks. We've got a list of significant top 5 risks and issues which are not yet closed, ordered by one of the columns in the data. We've got some key stats or statuses about the technical aspects of the project: plan, risk, issue, finances, benefits. We've got some process status about which step of the process are we through, some costing information, some dates, baseline dates, etc., commentaries, and that's bringing our project statement, a one-page summary, together. So that's going to be generated at each project, as can other reports of that type. So we have project reports here. Now, as we mentioned, we can group our projects into portfolios. So for example, we might set up a portfolio called Department 1, and it will have projects A, B, C, D in it, and perhaps others. That's either done by simply administrating the portfolio and saying which projects you want to include in it, or they can be auto-assembled based on rules. So give me all the projects over a certain value, and compound rules, of course, over the project, all the projects over a certain value which are not closed and which are managed by an external project manager. That sort of combination of things. And we can have multiple portfolios. They don't all have to be grouped by the same sort of aspect. So we can be grouping some things by sponsor, some things by department. And of course, when that happens, you often want to be able to put the same project into multiple portfolios, because the project is in Portfolio A, Department 1, but it's also been sponsored by a particular person who wants to see a list of all the projects they're sponsoring. So these can be used for navigation, and then of course for reporting. So we can then run a report against the particular portfolio, and it will give us the projects and all the data for it. We can chart those in various ways. We can bring back timelines for them, and benefits information and risk and issue, and all the same sorts of stuff that we saw earlier, and we're going to be exploring further. But this is project level, and then portfolio level, and then the final level is a multi-portfolio report. Here, of course, you don't want to be mixing apples and pears. You'd like to compare apples and apples, or be adding up apples and apples. So here we might have a multi-portfolio report of Department 1, Department 2, 7 and 5. They don't have to be in a particular logical order in the way that we've shown A, B, C, D. This would group together or bring the pre-grouped together data from each of those portfolios, and then roll them up again to the top level. And again, you can choose what you might switch on in terms of statistics and timelines and risks and issues and all those other things. So it's taking that data, which is fundamentally collected and held at a project level, and enabling you to roll it up to a portfolio, and then to roll up your portfolios to a multi-portfolio level at the different combinations that suit you and might suit different people in the organization at different times, all within the same system. And then, as we mentioned before, reports can be generated to Word, out to browser, and to Excel. Not every report can go into every format. Generally the data type ones, project assignments and cost management, audit trail type information, assurance, etc., often go to Excel. The more presentational reports, which are used for management type reporting, are often available into Word and browser. Now those reports are generally produced for the person who's generated them, so they can look at them. If they're not happy with it, they can go back and change the data, update and correct things, and then reproduce reports again. Of course, when they are happy with the reports and they want to share them with other people, They can of course just print them out. They've got files for them. They can attach them to email, send them off to somebody, etc. But what commonly happens is they get published into what's called the report library, which is a part of the project. And so this library here shows me the reports that have been published for this project, who published them, when they published them, what comments they left, etc. And anybody who's got permissions on the project will be able to see this library or parts of this library depending on their permissions. So they'll be able to come in and open any of those published reports. Now you can also set it up so that when you drop a report into the library, it automatically sends an email reminder out to a distribution list, to tell them that there is a new report published, and giving them a link so they can simply click on the link and they'll be able to go and see that report in the report library. Okay, so let's have a look at some of that in action then. So as I come into the system here, I'm in a portfolio and I'm going to open one of my projects. So I have a project and a portfolio context. I could go off and run a report straight away, perhaps using a button on here. I could of course access the reports menu up here and go and generate a report, and I've got my project report item here, and I can then see some information about what's going to go into the report and how it's going to be set up. If you like, you can think about this sort of as a wizard really. It's deciding which elements to include or exclude in the report and how that data is then going to be presented on the way out, what format and what style is going to be applied to it. Now you don't have to remember to set all these things up each time, because you can have a set of saved report templates, and that's the case. The system always comes with a set of predefined report templates so that most people are running consistent standardized reports. So they simply come and select the one they want, project statement to print. It sets up this format for them, press run report, and it will go and generate that report. It's out to Word as we mentioned, and here I have that report. We can see now some of the detail of that showing here. I've got my timeline for the project. I've got any overdue tasks showing here. I've got the top 5 risks and issues. As we can see, they're ordered by issue severity and risk rating. And I've got a summary of the benefits picture showing down here. And then up at the top, we've got our statuses for plan, risk, issue, finance, benefits. The process statuses, where we are through that process. Key financial figures, key dates, description and commentary, the overall project status, and some information about percentage complete and progress to date. That was pretty straightforward to do. It produced that report automatically from me pressing the button, because it knew exactly what it needed to put in there, and it extracted that data from the project. Now these are consistent reports. That's the advantage of this. If I go to a different project here within my portfolio and run the report again. Now if I only ever run one report, which is not uncommon for project managers to just have one type of report they run, I can just press run report. It will always remember the last one I used. So now I get a report here for my second project. If we just zoom that down a little bit, we'll be able to see them side by side, and here we've now got one for one project, one for the other. We've got exactly the same layout of information. Obviously the project content is different because they're different projects. They've got different risks, different issues, different benefits, different timelines, etc. But the layout is exactly the same. The data will have come from the same places in the system and been dropped into the same places in the report. Now this is a major advantage when you're the department manager looking through and comparing projects, and being able to get to that piece of information that you want very quickly because you know the format. Now you can change these formats around if you want to. You can change the logos on them, where things appear, what things appear and don't appear, etc. And that's not the sort of thing you want every project manager to be able to do. Normally done by an administrator and then saved as a new report here, so that other people can then just pick it up out of the library and use it. So let's go back a step and understand where this data is coming from. So we've seen a range of bits of data there. We can see how that's controlled here. Project summary information. We've seen some status information. These are properties which are defined across your server, so they can be different for different customers, and are filled in by the project manager or PMO person who has responsibility for doing that. They can be pick list items, they can be text fields that you type in, and they can be large ones for copy paste, etc. They can be dates, they can be values, a whole range of different types of data. You decide what you want, and that's completed for your project. Most things are being done automatically for you, so the project or the system knows to get data for this project on tasks from this particular file, for risks and for issues from this file. Actually, in this case, it's all Planner. It's all the same file because Planner can support tasks, risks and issues. If you're using Microsoft Project for your plan source, you'd probably use a different file for your risks and issues. And in fact, all three can be different if you want them to be. But because this is in this list here, as soon as somebody makes a change to the plan, checks it out, checks it in, that data will feed straight through into the reporting. And we're going to have a look at that in just a second. So if I come to the Spreadsheets tab, this is showing where we're bringing data from spreadsheets in this project. There's quite a few in this case. These were set up by the methods. When we created a brand new project, it put all this information in place so that I could get a consistent output of that. I didn't have to, the project manager doesn't have to fill all that in and make sure they get it right. It's done by the system. And so this goes through picking out the bits that we want. So we're going to want a benefits list perhaps from our project, so it knows where to get that cell range from this particular file in the system. It's always going to go to the latest version of that to get it. It's bringing back a table of data, and we can view what that data is. It's this particular table here. This is what it got last time it was getting it. From the benefits, it was also getting some properties, and we can view what those are. A simple properties list, property name, property value. So that's populating the properties part of the database. We're also going to bring back some images perhaps from here as well. So we've got some images, we can see here images, and that's bringing me back some charts out of my spreadsheet, in this case just the one of those there. And we saw in fact where that fed into our reports. So these things are set up. Of course they are done automatically to help with consistency, but there's nothing wrong with you adding some extra things on if you want to for your project report. So you can add these extra items on here at the end, and then they can be picked up and put into your project report if that's appropriate. You can obviously close them off so you don't include them in the reporting now, or reactivate them as well. If you're setting up images for your reporting, you would add them here. First add the image as a file, and then reference it in here with size details, and it will populate that into your reporting for you. So a lot of this stuff is done for you automatically. Actually, there's not that much that you need to do manually each time. It's set up to work straight away on a new project. So if we go and make a couple of changes here, we'll be able to see those flowing through into our report. So I'm going to come and work on the plan itself, or the plan risk issue register. So I check the file out. Here's my plan, which, as we can see, this project said it was completed actually. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to uncomplete it by bringing it back to here. We'll be able to see that when we rerun the report, that this bar is now not showing as complete, and we'll change the risk, the task status to say it's red as well. We could, of course, while we're in here, work on the risks and issues. So all these risks were showing as open earlier. If I come and set this one to be closed, we'll be able to see that showing in the output report as well. So let's save and close that and check the file back in. That will read the data through into the system. As we mentioned before, changes to finances and changes to benefit spreadsheets, again, when the data is read back in, the data will be available for that updated reporting. So when I come back and run my project report again, we'll see we get a slightly different output. Of course, exactly the same structure, but some different content. So now we can see that we've got the percentage complete not quite showing as complete there. We've got a red status over here on our risks and issues. Well, it's only showing here not closed risks. So we had 3 before, now we've only got 2. So it's pretty straightforward sort of process, and this always guarantees that when you run a new report, you're going to have the latest data in it, because it's going straight back to the system every time, getting all that fresh information and dropping it into the right place for you. So one of your perhaps the department manager for your project wants to see this sort of report. They're reviewing 50 a month and they don't want lots and lots of detail, but perhaps the sponsor wants some more detail, so they want a different type of report. So if we come to load report specification here, and we'll pick a different one this time, we're going to do project poster to print. So we can see it's using a different format here. We'll see there's some different things switched on, images, etc. Different types of blocks of data, and when I run that, we're going to get something that looks quite different to the previous one. So we can see we've got some of the same elements. We've still got our timeline, obviously showing that latest information. Benefits block is the same. We're bringing back some content from spreadsheets here, where we've got separate commentaries and status information, finances from a spreadsheet. There are no images set for this project, as we saw, but other projects will display them in that place. Here we're then showing the not an overdue task list, but the summary of the tasks displayed in the Gantt. Risks and issues, we've got our analysis. Here we're showing all risks and all issues, so we can see that closed one is now showing in this particular report but wasn't in others. And in fact in this one we're also showing details of the responses that apply as well as the risks. I've got a detailed highlight report and my benefits list down here, and then this is that other risk table that was set up in my spreadsheet as an extra example that I'd included. So I'm wanting to show something, perhaps slightly different again for this project, where I'm not showing it for others. So the ability to have that sort of report for a different audience is very important. The project manager hasn't got to spend 2 hours doing a report for one person and then 3 hours doing a slightly different report for somebody else. It's just another 30 seconds. And when you finish producing that report, so if you want to publish it back into the project, you simply press publish. You share it into the reports directory here. You can rename it if you want to, so I can call this September 2017 report, and I could give it a bit of a description about what we thought about it and publish it. And that will be now appearing in the reports library. We can see that in the browser, we can also see that in the software. If I come to my reports library, I can see I've only got a couple of reports in for this project so far, but I can then see that, and other people who've got permissions to access the project will now potentially be able to see those as well. Now if I had a notification rule running, it would have sent an email out telling people about a link, and they can then follow that to go and see the report itself as it's been published. So that's reports at a project level, and those are sort of management type reports, if you like. We have lots of other types of data available. Sometimes we're included in those reports, sometimes not. So for example, if I come to reports and do projects document status report for this project, it's going to give me an assurance type report on this project. This is a fairly simple project. It's not really been got very much data in it, so we're not seeing a great deal of information here, but we've got versioning, how many times the various files have been versioned, have things been collected or not, who last viewed them or worked on them, etc. Let's switch to a more populated example where we were earlier and run that report again. And this time we're going to see quite a bit more information. So we can see the documents in the project and whether the content has been flagged as completed or not. Is some of it being worked on by people? How often have things changed? How are things going through approvals at the moment? And obviously we can see information over here about the usage, when it was last updated, who it was updated by, etc. So we can see that some content in here has never been updated, and some things haven't been collected yet as part of the assurance trail. Now these sort of reports are really good for PMO, auditing and reviewing projects. Are people working on the content you expect? Are they collecting the evidence you expect? Stage gate reviews, post-project reviews, etc. Really useful source of information. When it comes to other sorts of reporting, as you saw, we had a long library of the different sorts of reports that you can run. And they don't have to just be, as I say, into Word, they can be into browser, and they don't have to be multi-topic, they can be single topic. So if we wanted to just focus in on, for example, benefits, then we don't want all the other things switched on, like plans and risks and issues and things of that type. We're just going to be interested in benefits data. So this is a saved benefits specification, and it brings me back my benefits overview, benefits list, charts from the benefits register, properties relating to benefits. So it's different type of report for a different sort of focus, and as you see, this one's opened in browser, which is often better for viewing because it just comes to full screen straight away. Not necessarily so good for printing, but you can save your reports in the format, or the specifications for them in the formats that suit you. So that's creating some project reports. Let's take a jump up a level. I'm in a portfolio, and we can have a look at a portfolio report. So exactly the same principle applies. It's a very similar wizard. The only differences are that here you can be specifying things for both project and portfolio level of the reporting. So I can load a specification again, and we're going to have a poster to browser, and that's going to define what's going to be included in the report. And as I run it, you'll see it then going and getting data from each of the projects in the portfolio and gluing them together. Now this is a really important type of reporting, because you'd hope that your project managers can get it together to produce a fairly standardized report in the way that you ask them to, with the appropriate data, etc. Might take them a few hours, but you'd hope they can. But still, when you then have to do your reporting and glue things together at the portfolio level, that's going to take a long time to do. It all has to be done by hand or pasted into spreadsheets and updated and charts produced, etc. And there's always a high possibility of messing that up, miscalculating, getting the wrong data, not presenting it in a way that's appropriately consistent, or if there's been inconsistencies in the way project teams have calculated that data, you're just going to build on those errors as you roll it up. Now this of course is bringing all of that together and doing it very quickly. So here we can see all of our projects down the left hand side, the various bits of data we want, and we've got two different blocks of data here, a properties type block and then another one just focusing purely on benefits. So we've got two of those here, and then we've got some timeline information, we've got some finances data, we've got risk and issue analysis, and again filters applying here, so we're not showing everything, we're showing only things above a certain low level. Our status and commentary type information again blocked up from each project. Simple sort of report, and really quite straightforward to generate. The sort of thing that often takes PMOs days to do, and then somebody will come back and say, oh actually I want another bit of data, and you've got to start all over again, or I want to add another project. You've got to insert all that into all the calculations. So this makes it very easy to do. It works on the current set of projects in the portfolio, so if we take one out or add a new one in, rerun the report straight away, we'll get all that new content included. Making changes to reports like this can also be pretty straightforward if we just want to change the data that's included here. Layout might require us to fiddle around a bit with HTML for the HTML layouts, or with Word templates for the Word things. But if we wanted to just, for example, change that status analysis grid here and add a new property into it, so currently it's got this set of properties that we're showing, and I might want to include another one, so I just go to my available set of properties for this project, that's these ones here, and I choose which one I want to add in. So maybe into that status I also want to add the baseline finish date, like that. That's now in. It'll be showing as the last column here, but I could move it up a couple so it's next to the planned finish date, and I can now rerun my report, and it's going to get that piece of data from all the projects, or the projects that have that piece of data, because they may not all have it, and then it's going to show me that in that updated report. And again, doesn't take too long to do. It always warns me if I'm asking for something that isn't present. So one of these projects doesn't have a finances log. Okay, so here we are. We've got our planned start date, planned finish date, baseline start date, and we can see that in the table. We could do some formatting to get that to be the same sort of date format as there if we wanted to, and we can obviously juggle those things around. So changing reports can be a pretty straightforward thing to do. Now if I was an administrator and I was happy with this change, I could then save this report specification, overwriting an existing one or creating a new one, which will then be there for my colleagues to work on. So rolling that data up to that portfolio level. The final step is rolling up to a multi-portfolio level, which we've got here, multi-portfolio report. And so here again I can load and save specifications. The form is of a similar nature, not unsurprisingly. There are a few changes in it. So here, because we're outside of the current project and portfolio, because we need multi-portfolios, we pick those from the list of the available portfolios that we have. We choose the things we want to include again. So I'm including a Gantt chart. I'm not including any risk and issue analysis at the top level. I'm going to include a milestone summary for each portfolio and some properties information as well. And so I can just run that. It's going to go away and get all that data from that set of portfolios and build out the report for me, which we've got here. So we've got firstly a statistical summary of the properties. I've got each of my portfolios across here, the number of projects in each portfolio, the number on track, in exception completed, totaling up at the bottom. I've got the benefits value rolled up from each portfolio to the organisational level, number of open risks, open issues, overdue task, the risk total. So a range of properties there which I've chosen to have in this report, and are all rolled up for me automatically. I can chart them again, so I've got my risk level split showing how the overall risk here is split between the different portfolios, and we can see that there. And then I've got my timeline for the projects in the portfolios rolling up to the overall organisational level one, if you like. And then breaking down each portfolio at a time, I've got a milestone summary. All sorts of different things we can do here, but we've gone for a milestone summary of the portfolio showing which milestones are complete, on track or overdue against the timeline, and then I've got the data associated with that. And then I've got the properties grid showing the projects within that portfolio and which ones are contributing which bit of data, like that. So we could have drilled down if we wanted to, and we've then got the individual project risk level contributing up to the portfolio risk level. So these figures here will broadly match the figures that were in that very top level table. And then I've got the one for the next portfolio as I come down. So this is next one's got milestone timelines, details, etc. So laying out that, and of course here we've got already a 20-page report, and that's not unsurprising in this sort of circumstance. And you imagine how long that would have taken you to generate by hand, and then you'd still be unsure necessarily whether it was all accurately done. So lots of customers are using these sorts of things to speed up the cycle of reporting and improve significantly the confidence around reporting. So rather than, well, we have our board meetings 3 weeks into the next month because it takes us that long to get the reporting together, what often happens now is first day of the next month we run these sort of reports, we circulate them for a preview, and then in the meeting often they run live in front of the customer, as you've just seen me do, or in front of the board or whoever the audience is, so that you're getting actually the very latest live data into them. So that helps build massively the confidence that the process is good, that the access to data is good, that things aren't being manipulated behind the scenes, and obviously it brings the decision making closer to the data, which can only be valuable when you're looking at cropping off failing projects, making decisions, at appropriate times in the life cycle of the project. So that's hopefully some interesting information about reporting. We're just going to dip back to the PowerPoint for a couple of wrapping up slides. So to summarize, what we've been doing is establishing consistent data collection. We're bringing using the method templates to establish consistent sources for the data, Standardizing data from the project controls, so we're bringing always the same information from task, risks and issues. We're giving the project managers some flexibility so they can add their own additional content if they want. And then we're standardizing the properties and metadata. So we're really working quite hard here to tie down things. And as an organization, you'll have to work out, what you want from your reporting and what you want people to be contributing. And we're collating, obviously, user activity automatically behind the scenes. But that's really tightening up where the data is coming from, how it's structured, and how it's available for use. And we're then templating the outputs. So we're making sure that we've got a report template, and two different projects are going to have the same layout and structure and rules applied to them, but it's obviously going to be different content in each of those. And there are lots of examples of how all that works. And of course, into that you can put your own branding and look and feel. You can define the type of analysis that's done. There can be different ones for different scales and complexities of project, etc., for different focus of audience. And they can be set up so that it's just at the touch of a button. There's no having to make sure everyone sets up their project in the same way and runs the same report with all the different options switched on and off. And of course, a very important part is when you're publishing to Word, you can edit it prior to distribution. You're only getting it as a Word file. You can perhaps edit the commentary. It's often difficult to write a commentary for a project until you see all that data in one place together. You can then edit the commentary and save that Word file, which is then what you're going to distribute to people. And enabling aggregation, which is really where the major cost savings come in here. Yes, you're saving time at project report production level, but really the time saved and the improvements in quality when you're rolling data up are it's difficult to put a number on them sometimes, the quality measures, but it's gives much more confidence around what you're actually generating, and that's because it's been done by the machine, obviously much quicker, etc. And you can drill down, back down if you want to, from the portfolios or the multi-portfolios we saw back into the portfolio within the same report, and in the portfolio report you can go from the portfolio level down into the projects. So it's not just a one-way process, you can have the reverse coming back as well. Okay, so I hope you found that helpful. That's quite a long session and lots of detail there. If you've got any further questions, drop us